Hi everybody, Counselor Dave Lane here, and I'd like to chat with you today about the Bike St. John's Master Plan. You may have heard of it in the news recently because we recently announced it. We released the final draft after quite a bit of time of effort and public engagement, and I'm really excited about it for a couple of main reasons. One is that it's really based on a lot of work that I just mentioned, a lot of really great discussion that we had with thousands of residents in looking to other cities and towns to see how they implement and why they implement bike plans. And second is the reason we implemented it is that what this will do is enable more people, all people really, to lead a safe, comfortable, active lifestyle in our city. And that's something that we hear a lot about people wanting, and it makes for a better city. So this has a lot of potential, and I think it's really something that we should be all excited about. I'll briefly tell you about the plan itself. So it has policy suggestions and programs to help encourage and enable cycling, but really the core of the plan is a network of connected bike routes. And the reason that that is so important is because in order for a cycling plan to be a success, it has to be useful. And so connecting all the different paths together and trying to connect all the key destinations and areas of the city means that more people are able and likely to use it. And it's based, as I mentioned, on a lot of research that has been done, and it's a customized bike plan. It's not just a copy and paste of some other city. It really gets into not only what people want and need here in the city of St. John's, but also the physical and climate realities that we face. A lot of people might say that we have too many hills. Well, this bike plan really is based on our topography, and it says how can we avoid steep hills, and it does that in many ways. And also in terms of climate, we want to get the pathways off of busy streets and close to people's homes so that they can get more direct routes, or if it's nice out, because we do get those days, people can kind of meander and have a recreational feeling and just get out, and that is really the big part of it. So now I mentioned that you may have heard it in the news, and any big project is going to have initial reactions, and some of them are negative, and so I want to address some of those. And I'll start by saying that really where they're coming from comes down to a key component of the bike master plan, which is called a shared use path. And a shared use path tries to achieve our objective of safe and comfortable trails, paths for all people of all ages and abilities. And so a shared use path is a wide path so that people can share it together without bumping into each other. And it's paved. And the reason it's paved is because it actually does two things. It enables more types of wheels and steps to make use of it. And it also, believe it or not, is lower cost. Now, we have identified three catalyst projects, three routes, three paths on the route that we think can really get things started, because ultimately this master plan is a years-long vision. It'll take a long time to get there because it's big and it costs money. And I'm on Kelly's Brook path, which is the first of the three in priority order. I'm here with my son. I should say hello to him. I got him dressed for our spring. But I'm in a stroller, and it works fine. And I've heard a lot of people say that, a lot of bikes and strollers work fine on a gravel trail like this. But it's not true for all types of users. I mean, there's some wheelchairs, for example, scooters, if you want to take the full family, they won't necessarily work well. And also, I mentioned that about maintenance costs, especially if we start adding new users with wheels to our paths, because that's part of the reason we want to do this. They'll get beat up even more quickly than they are now, and because the surface just scatters everywhere. So a properly engineered shared use trail, which is what we would build based on best practices, would actually not be impacted very much by the freeze and thaw that we know cause potholes on roads. Those are used by cars and trucks, hundreds of thousands a day, much more impact than a shared use walking and bike trail would cause. And also people are concerned about like route upheaval. That's not going to be as much of an issue too, based on the way it's built and the materials used. And quickly on the shared use path as well, we're using existing trails, and I'll talk about some of the concerns that people have mentioned. I mentioned one, which was that there'd be damage or cost due to the use of pavement. But what we heard through all of the engagement that we did and all the research we did is that in order for people to cycle more or to get out, be more active, they want to feel safe and they want to feel comfortable. They want to be able to get on that path and feel like they're not going to get hit by a car, for example. And so the best way to do that is to get the routes off of streets. And we have an incredible trail network already. It's meant for all residents to make use of. And so we looked there and said, really, that's the ideal place to have a shared use path. So let's upgrade those paths. So the first concern really that I've been hearing about is that there are people who use and love these trails, and I'm Kelly's Brook. You can see, I mean, where I am now, it's just a wide open space. But earlier you saw I was amidst trees, and then a couple of the other trails we're looking at, which is Virginia River and Rennie's River trails, they're along rivers. So there's a concern that by widening pretty significantly the trail that exists there would really alter the feel of the path. And that'll be true in some cases, but I guess the first point I'll make on that is that we will do significant engagement again once we get into what's called the detailed design. What you'll see on the engagestjohns.ca website for the bike plan are 33% design for those three catalyst projects. So when we go for meter by meter planning out the construction of shared use trails, and we will start with Kelly's Brook, which doesn't have as many issues as the other two. We'll talk with the residents, we'll go down and say, okay, how can we do this? And it won't necessarily mean as much damage as people might fear. Now, the second thing that I hear about is really a concern about safety. And the whole point of the bike plan is to have safe trails. But people who walk on the trails now, first of all, bikes aren't technically allowed on them right now, but cyclists still use them sometimes. And what happens is that they'll ride by a walker and they might not hear them coming, or they might actually physically bump into them, or just makes the ride a little less enjoyable. And by the way, I'm going to note that I'm going through some rough patches here. It's a lot harder to push my stroller, just a note. But by widening the path, we have to keep this in mind, we're actually making it safer for multiple types of traffic to be using the trail. So that's an important point to keep in mind, is that widening the trail is actually going to make it less concerning. Because the second concern that I've been hearing is that, well, when you add bikes, people are just going to be speeding and that's going to be dangerous. Well, first of all, yes, they're going to be wider, which will mean that passing people won't be as much of an issue. But most cyclists using paths like this, they aren't professional riders. They want to ride at a reasonable pace, and we will be, a major important component of this is that we do education. And we say, how do you use a trail? How should you be speeding? How do you deal with a situation where you come up against another trail user? Dismount at narrow areas, because those will still exist. So education is going to be important, and we do mention policy as well, things from the Highway Traffic Act that impact how you can cycle in the city. So those things are all being considered, and the key again is so that we can have trails that are useful for all people and are safe and comfortable. Finally, the pavement itself, I've heard from some people who don't like the idea of paving because, well, I've heard mostly it's runners, but others as well, that say pavement is hard on runners. It's not like the gravel that we use now. It's much softer and easy on the knees, that sort of thing. And I understand that, absolutely. So I guess the point there is that we're not replacing all of our walking trails with pavement and widening. But also, there will be shoulders on most of the widened areas, and a lot of runners, they actually ride on the shoulders of our existing gravel paths because it's softer. So that'll still exist as an option. But again, we're trying to enable more people to use it. So some people will see a negative impact on their favorite trail, but this is about increasing usage and enabling more and more people to use it. So, as with any big plan, an initiative to make things better or improve things for residents, there's going to be concerns. And I got to tell you, we are really listening, and it's one of my top priorities is to make sure that anything we do implement is implemented properly, and that it's done in a way that people understand, are as comfortable as possible with, but ultimately benefits the entire city, and that is really what this can do. So I'm really excited about the potential here, and I think it's going to make our city better. I think that some of the concerns, they're not as bad as people might be worried about, but also there's a lot of benefits that come out of having a very solid bike network, which is what we've got planned. So with all that said, I'd like to thank you very much for taking the time to listen to this. If you have any questions at all or concerns or ideas, leave a comment, reach out to me. I'm excited to talk about it. And hopefully we can all work together to do something which ultimately is going to benefit all of us. So thanks again, and talk to you soon.